Welcome to my ultimate tactician archer guide for Age of Empires Mobile in 2026, where I will explain everything that you need to know from Season 1 all the way up to Season 7. So you have the Signet rings, the gems, the adornments, the mounts that you're going to need to know to excel this formation and explain the different paths that you have at your disposal. Do you want to be a major DPS threat with Ramesses, or do you want to control your enemies by placing incapacitations and silence effects with heroes such as St. Louis here, and even break down the support differences of passive versus active skills that you can be using in your formations with Charlemagne and Confucius. So no matter what, by the end of this video, you should know everything that you're going to need to know for Tactician Archers. So smash a like, comment, and subscribe. Click on the link down below if you want to download Age of Empires Mobile right now. And let's just dive into the very beginning, which is going to be, sadly but surely, Dio-chan. I know I caught you all off guard, but I have to bring this one tactician hero up because Dio-chan, as many people will know, is maybe on every single person's account, even at a 0-star investment, because she's the #1 gathering based hero in the game that you can get access to, and it's very cheap in order to do so. As well as this, you do have YSS. You're able to use this hero as your early game DPS threat until you wait for your Ramesses, as an example, to replace him. But even afterwards, he's going to be a gathering-based hero for your teams. So even though you might have invested into him and you might be getting a replacement, you're never going to lose any of your investment on your teams, which is actually a really good thing that Tactician Archers share as a formation whole. So now let's break down the two different paths, because this is the main reason you guys are here. Firstly, Ramesses is DPS, and I mean that. If you want to deal as much damage as humanly possible in Age of Empires Mobile, Ramesses is your go-to pick for your Tactician Archers. This is just because when it comes to his skill, it's all about activating additional signature active skills in combat. His commander skill reads, reduce the movement speed of 3 enemies in the area by 20% and for 3 seconds, but you enter the Holding Blessing state, which increases your strategy by 30 points and activates an additional signature skill once per second. And when you 5-star this hero, which I will say I must recommend is a must do, because if you have him 3 stars, you're gonna get absolutely caught down with your pants down there, I promise. Your 5-star Ramesses gains the ability to have a 100% chance to nullify silencing effects. This is really important because, as I mentioned in the future with the controls part, silence is going to stop you from activating these said skills. So when we go to our signature skill now, we're going to be dealing 245% damage through an active skill. So when it's his turn in combat to take an action, this is going to go off 30% of the time. But when it does as well, for the first 30 seconds of combat, he generates 16 rage. And then afterwards, it reduces by 50% to 8 rage for activation. And this is really important because, as you've read in the commander skill, this means when it's up, he's going to generate 32 rage every time he's activating his skill now, which allows him again to cycle back into his commander skill and keep firing off. As you can see, all of his other skills that we're going to have access to, and you can check these out in game when we go into the formation section, are all about increasing his own strategy, increasing his damage output, or increasing his activation chance for this hero. This is super important when it comes to Ramesses in the game. So now we kind of can see what DPS is all about. Let's explain what the other guys are about. So we've got St. Louis, we've got Queen Saint-Deoc, and we also have Suleiman as options for you to go through. All 3 of them are basically the same control setups that have their own wins for doing so. Suleiman's the very first one. You're going to get access to him in Season 2 through Legendary Advent Wheel. His actual commander skill deals damage to 1 target alone, which isn't great, but it's better already because obviously Ramesses wasn't dealing any. But you also inflict the incapacitation state, which obviously makes it so the enemies cannot deal any damage for 3 seconds, and this goes down on a 3-second cooldown before you can reapply it again. This is quite huge because when you read his signature skill, he enters a charge state which deals damage, but if the enemy is got the burn effect on them, they deal an additional blast of damage. If they are silenced, guess what? You increase the next skill of this hero, which is Suleiman's damage output, which is huge. And then if they're incapacitated through his main commander skill, he recovers troops on his unit troops. So I love that. I love the fact that you've got recovery, damage boosting, and basically an extra bang for having these different control effects. And that is literally what they're all about, trying to control your enemies and get some benefits off it. Queen Sneakyy is all about dealing damage and silencing the enemy, and she also has the ability to place configuration, which is a burn effect on the enemy, which means they take damage over time. Then if we go over to our St. Louis, he is a later game hero, very similar to our good friend Suleiman, but has a fan-shaped area that hits 3 enemies, but he has a 30% chance to actually place this incapacitation on at max level. And this is one thing I will say, depending on the player, if you want to go down the Suleiman or St. Louis route, it is up to you. Do you want to target one march, 100% guarantee with Suleiman and incapacitate them? Or do you want to AoE, cleave, and potentially with a 30% chance, hit 3 of them? That is the difference between them, and I think both of them are very good commanders in their own right for your particular play style. But when we go back into our good friend St. Louis, his skills afterwards are dealing damage. And the thing is, he increases his own damage. He even increases the next person that's acting, so damage output as well. But what's really cool as well with this hero is when the enemies go below certain thresholds, he just gets extra bonuses. He does extra damage. He gets extra instances of damage too through Sacred Flame of Judgment, for example. So he's just a really cool hero that does reward you for killing enemies once they hit there after you've controlled them down, which is a very, very cool playstyle. And as you'll notice, there's no warriors like this. And even when it comes to marshals, they have tools, but not silencing effects. They have disarming effects. So it's really nice to have this little bit of personality within the Tactician archers, as well as the Tactician formation tree as a whole. Now, when it comes to the supports, as I said before, supports come in 2 ways. They either come with passive-based skills or active-based skills. And the best way to explain this is, if it's a passive, it's always active. So if you look at Theodora, which is a passive-based hero, she always, no matter what, 100%, this is always happening, is reducing troop damage, which is getting increased by her strategy. But every 2 times your commander uses their signature active skill, the next signature active skill deals bonus damage. That's her passive. That means it's always up. When you compare that to an active skill, and we can go to even Confucius, which is a really good example, his active skill only applies when it's his turn to activate. And this means when we go into any of our formations, you can kind of see me running it on the swordsman here, your commander is first to act, then this is the second to act, this is the third to act. If anyone is in slot 2 or 3, they are classed as second in command. They are not the commander of this formation. Make sure you understand that, because that means you can get more actives going compared to delaying those actives being on the 3rd slot. And you're going to notice a lot of my formations take advantage of this in these formation setups. So now we kind of understand the difference between all of the supports, and now I've even explained the difference between the formations, and I've given you the early game stuff to do with YSS being a Garen commander that you might use as a DPS hero as a substitute for any of the main guys that I'm going to showcase right now. Let's go through all the things that you've been wanting for the formations, where you get them, how you're going to get them, and what you're going to need. Very firstly, Suleiman, Queen Sneakyy, Theodora. Suleiman is Legendary Advent Wheel 2. Sneakyy is through the Heroic Expedition or buying daily expedition chests. And Theodora is the exact same, plus the Mightiest Government event in certain cases. When you look at the skills, we're running Suleiman with Strategy Master's Gift, Flash of Inspiration. We want him to not be in the charging state. That is the weakest part about this hero, because if you're in the charging state, you can be disrupted. Again, if we click on his skill, you can check this out yourself in game. This explains it when you just click on any of the yellow glowing text in there. So active skills require 3 seconds of charging to be activated. If a hero is in a charging state, it can be interrupted by a silence or a skill that basically can stun them as well. That just basically stops them from doing anything. So you want to try and avoid this as much as possible. Because of that, Strategy Master's Gift gives you more damage and activation chance, and Flash of Inspiration gives you a massive 85% chance to skip the charging state, which is what you're going to want. You need that 85% at max in order to get consistent damage output without being interrupted. Now, Queen Sneakyy is going to be using configuration with our war tactic. This is just so she can also deal damage with her signature skill, as well as placing a burn on the target and then dealing damage and recovering troops with war tactics. As you can see with these two heroes and just their kit alone, Suleiman and Queen Sneakyy covers all 3 requirements for the Suleiman's signature skill. So you can potentially get all 3 bonuses of dealing an extra instance of damage, increasing your damage output, and recovering units. One thing to note when it comes to your Queen Sneakyy and when it comes to any of these formations that you're going to notice with the Signet rings, she is dealing damage. Because she's dealing damage, you want to try and make sure the Signet ring that you put on them isn't going to affect that at all, because you can put that onto a hero that's there to honestly heal. Queen Sneakyy isn't too bad, and she is the only hero in the game that silences. And one thing that I want to make clear right now is if you choose to run a Queen Sneakyy with a Suleiman, you're going to be telling everyone you're in a pure control build. You're not bothered about damage. You're not bothered about anything else. You just want to control the enemy. This is important because you're going to be using it maybe with your other formations, maybe like a warrior cavalry like Lubu, or even King Arthur. Maybe you've got Miyamoto, maybe you're running Yodi, Cyrus, whoever you're running in the game as your main DPS to do the damage while these guys are helping them facilitate that, right? So Queen Sneakyy is in there. Now, when it comes to Theodora, as you guessed it, she is going to keep our units alive. She's running the Immortal Army as war tactics as well, just to keep as much stats as possible. When you read her skill, again, every time we're doing a bonus with our Suleiman, he's boosting himself, and every 2 times he fires off, Theodora now is boosting him even further, which is a really nice skill. If you want to, and some people do this in the early game because they do not have access to a maxed out Flash of Inspiration, you can actually max out Maneuver. Maneuver is a very good epic skill to honorably mention for this hero. You get a 75% chance to help your Suleiman skip the charging state. But you don't need this and the Flash of Inspiration, you'll realize. Because you've got Flash of Inspiration being at 85%, it's way more consistent, and you'd rather bench Maneuver for some extra healing. So just remember that while you are maybe using this early on instead, but once you get obviously to the big skills, you're going to be running War Tactic and Immortal Armor. This is recovering troops and purifying all hero attribute debuffs on your march. Very important, because with this formation, you're going to be doing so much damage and control that you can't really allow people to steal stats with Ring of the Crow, or even such like a Hannibal stealing those stats as well. When it comes to the ring choices, it's really important to understand where these rings are going to go, because these rings are very similar to every single formation that you're going to see in the future. Skyward Knight is the premier ring for this formation no matter what. It's gonna reduce the damage of the hero that it's equipped to. However, it makes your commander way more effective. And because of this, you always equip the Skyward Knight to whatever support is doing the least possible amount of damage. So in this formation, it's Theodora. When it comes to Queen Sneakyy, we're going to be running one of the 4 different types of defensive rings that you can choose. There's Ring of the Falcon, there is Lofty Mountain, there's Tranquil Water, and even the brand new Swirling Tempest. Each one of these rings are either reducing a particular type of damage, recovering units, and also giving you, in the Swirling Tempest eyes, some extra damage output. You want to put this onto the second support that's basically in that lineup that's doing damage, because you don't want to reduce how effective they are. When it comes to Suleiman's ring, you can run Everflame Wings or the Ring of the Serpent. Ring of the Serpent is an epic ring. It's going to boost up your strategy stats absolutely out of this world, so you do even more damage than you should supposed to. Everflame Wings, though, is a very powerful ring because it is a turn-based ring that is going to do a burn effect and have a percentage chance to silence the enemy and also increase the amount of strategy damage they take. So this one ring helps Suleiman on his own be as effective as possible. But with this setup, as I mentioned, this is for pure control. And in the later stages, if you want to keep running a pure control setup, you can upgrade this into one with Confucius in the back. And even in season 5 and 6, when you get in towards Zhu Liang through the legendary Advent Wheel, you're going to be able to use him at the third slot as well. This third slot is basically putting in the best support that you can put in order to keep your control element alive. If you don't want to do this, the mid-game spike is in Season 3, 4, and 5, because this is where you unlock Charlemagne as a Tactician swordsman through the legendary Advent Wheel, and Zhu Liang in the exact same way, legendary Advent Wheel, but in a couple of seasons later on. As you'll see, we've got the, again, Skyward Knight equipped to Zhu Liang. This is because he's only there to heal and reduce damage while transferring stats to your Suleiman. Charlemagne can have one of the 4 other rings equipped, and with Bloodthirst and War Tactic equipped, we are going to deal as much damage passively with this hero as these active skills go off, but both of the Bloodthirst and as well as the War Tactic is actually recovering units. And as I'm going to mention, one major thing with Tactician archers that you really want to do as a core principle is be as tanky as possible. Archer units in the game are the glass cannons of the game. If you check out the buildings and click on the unit information, you will see that the actual unit themselves have the highest attack stat while having the lowest defense stat in the game, while sharing the exact same health as every other unit in there. So because of this, you always want to make sure that you have sustainability, recover troops, reduce damage taken as much as possible in order to have that sustain. Now, if you want to go to the final build for Suleiman, and I think this is the best setup personally, is running Suleiman, Confucius, and Zhu Liang. This setup, if you are a Suleiman player, will guarantee, no matter what, high uptime in the open field because you have the #1 support, which is Confucius, running his Spring Breeze and Peaceful Haven for that massive damage reduction on there. Then Zhu Liang running his Borrowing of the Eastern Wind and War Tactic just to help that little bit of extra healing in the team. Confucius and Zhu Liang being in his setup is the best way because Zhu Liang is passive, so putting him on the third spot, he's still going to activate as much as he needs to, apart from that War Tactic, which isn't as detrimental. And then Confucius can activate sooner with his main signature active skill, which can obviously trigger Peaceful Haven and other skills to go off. So this is what I would consider the best tank setup for Suleiman. But the one thing that you do sacrifice, as you may have noticed, is that Queen Sendiok, and you're going to rely on that good old Everflame Wing at level 40 to level 50 to actually land the silence to have that third bonus, because it will burn, silence, and your Suleiman will incapacitate, which is all 3 things in one hero done. You can also use mounts later on, which I'm going to explain for this match specifically. That can do one of the each control effects as well to help Suleiman out, which means you can drop that Queen Sendiok to run what I would consider the best late game setup. Confucius is a Mightiest Governor event hero unlocked in Season 7. So it is the latest season. You're going to have to save up your resource and speed ups in order to get in. Now, when we go through all of these formations, what you'll notice is the ratings: obtainability, viability, and longevity. Honestly, there isn't any other match that does what these matches do as consistent. So the longevity and viability is always going to be a 9 out of 10. Would I recommend this to be your very first formation for maybe a free-to-play or low spender? No, I would go for something else that is a more DPS oriented formation. However, if you do want to bring that second formation to help your main one, this could be something that you bring. Especially for the bigger spenders in the game, many people use this formation to target King Arthurs. Because if a King Arthur is obviously incapacitated, he ain't dealing any damage, and as you can imagine, he's not going to blow up anyone in that open field. And we saw this in massive success even in Apex Championship and other game modes like Wonders and Battle of Dawn as well. So you'll notice Suleiman is the king of trying to keep people in line when it comes to control for guarantees. Now, let's change it up. Let's go for damage, because now we're going to go over some Ramesses setups. Ramesses here with Xueliang and Theodora. Ramesses is available through the Mightiest Governor event in Season 3 with Xueliang, which we just talked about, Season 5 for the Legendary Advent Wheel, and Theodora you can actually earn from the beginning of the game through heroic expeditions and other payment methods. The whole point of this game is literally to boost up Ramesses as much as possible. Xueliang is going to be there to obviously boost up the stats as well as the reduction of damage of your Ramesses. Theodora is there to recover units, and again, every 2 activations of your Ramesses be able to increase his damage output. You can also change this later on for a Charlemagne setup. You can run Ramesses, Charlemagne, and Xueliang, and while you're waiting for Xueliang, if you don't have him, as you're probably going to guess as I'm going to say, you would run Ramesses, Charlemagne, Theodora until you hit this point. What's really good about this is, as you'll see, with the Charlemagne version, you are running double passive heroes, meaning you really don't need to worry where you put these heroes, especially with Xueliang running the Peaceful Haven in this aspect to give your march that extra damage reduction that it would be lacking without it otherwise. Charlemagne running that Bloodthirst War Tactic combo means he's doing double active skill damage, but more importantly, recovering through 2 instances of damage as well. Later on, and the best setup for Ramesses, as many people will say, is Confucius, Xueliang, as well as Ramesses. This is because Confucius is going to be the king healing support for Tactician archers, running Peaceful Haven with Spring Breeze for his main skill there, and then Xueliang in the back, running the good old boring East Wind, as well as War Tactic for his 2 skills to give you sustain and obviously increase your damage output. The rings, as you'll notice, are the exact same as before with the Suleiman rings, because this is one good thing with Tactician archers. No matter what rings you actually purchase for this formation, you can literally transfer them to all of the different heroes and formation setups that I'm showing you in today's video, and it's going to get working, which is an amazing long-term investment and, more importantly, flexibility that you have at your disposal. After we go through, obviously, the Ramesses, Confucius, and Xueliang combo, there's only 2 other heroes, or 2 other hero formations that I want to talk about. This is going to be St. Louis, Charlemagne, and Confucius, and then St. Louis, Confucius, Xueliang. The difference between these 2 formations is very simple. This setup is all about trying to give you as much opportunity to stay on the open field as possible. Confucius Xueliang has been proven to be the best tanking support combo in the game to help your St. Louis go off. However, if you want even more chances to go off, you can double this up with Confucius and Charlemagne. Even on this picture, they are swapped around, which I do apologize. You want to run Confucius in that second slot to try and active his skill to immediately trigger the St. Louis active skill. And then the Charlemagne passive will trigger again, potentially 20% of the time when it's his turn, just to activate your St. Louis skill. So this is all about damage, as you guessed it, with Charlemagne and Confucius, while Confucius Xueliang is all about reducing and being more of a tank support in these open field. And that is, honestly, all of the formations. And I know I've gone through a lot of there because there's 3 different heroes in basically a bunch of different configurations. I'm going to summarize it for you guys from Season 1 all the way to Season 7 so you can understand the differences. So firstly, Suleiman marches. You'll start off with Suleiman, Sandiok, and Theodora. This is going to be your bread and butter as a pure control formation that later on that you will upgrade into either a Confucius in the backline or a Xueliang in the backline in order to have a very survivable formation to control your enemy. Or you're going to go down the more aggressive route which is running Charlemagne and Zuliang to increase your Suleiman's damage output and survivability, and in the later seasons, Confucius Zuliang for the same thing, but with even more consistency and effectiveness. Ramesses has two setups. You have Ramesses with the good old Zuliang Theodora. This is just to keep you alive as long as possible while firing off your skills with Ramesses and getting bonuses off that. Or you can go for the more offensive option, which is running Ramesses, Charlemagne, Zuliang for your main DPS. Until you run any of these two formations, as you've guessed, Theodora will be in this setup, and you'll be able to put her on the bench or use her in a different formation like a control setup if you want to do that later on. Later in the Ramesses build-up, you want to go Confucius and Zuliang for the main, I would say, best of the best Archer March for him. It's going to keep him alive the longest, and it's going to give him the most effectiveness on his damage output and activation chance for his signature active skill. Finally, the only two formations left is the damage build for St. Louis, which is going to try and give, obviously, your Charlemagne just a little bit of extra damage output for that Bloodthirst and War Tactic, but he is trying to make St. Louis activate his skills more often with Confucius. But the better setup that I prefer is running Confucius with a Zuliang. This is just so you have as much survivability again in the open field to trigger that St. Louis commander skill off as many times as possible in the game. And that's going to give you plenty of incapacitation states to the enemy. So now we've gone through all of that, as you guys have guessed it, let's break down the actual signet ring choices properly on screen so you understand what they do. Go through the gems, go through your adornments, and obviously the last parts for these heroes. So when you go into the signet rings, as I've showcased all of them, just to give them a little bit more reasoning so you can see why I'm saying what I'm saying, Everflame Wings has this very powerful effect which inflicts burn and increases the strategy damage taken by the enemy troop and silences. So because of this, you can run this one ring on Suleiman, as I mentioned, in order to fulfill all three parts. And if you want to go down a actual control setup, when you hit level 20 on this ring is when you start to really see results. From 20, 30, and especially level 40, this ring starts to become unmatched. You will beat other players that do not have an Everflame Wings, and this is even in the case for Ramesses marches, St. Louis marches, and the Suleiman marches. No matter what, if you go toe-to-toe against other players and they don't have this ring and you do, you 9 times out of 10 beat them just through the control elements and the tempo swings you're going to have, which I think is a very good one. Lofty Mountain is a very staple ring. It's 1600, it gives you commander damage, and it scales off armor and strategy. This reduces might damage taken, which is very powerful, and it also increases your troops' damage output, so it helps everyone do more damage. So this is why I always recommend this ring. Swirling Tempest is actually one of the new kids on the block, and I have actually unlocked this ring and seen some really good results out of it already. This gives you troop health, defense, and troop damage reduction, which makes you super tanky out there in the open field. But on top of that, you reduce the critical strike damage of your enemies by 11%, even at level 20, and you increase your damage by 0.79%, and you increase your damage reduction by 1.5, which is amazing because these stack up to 6 times, and obviously scales even better. So this is at level 30, 40, and 50. You're getting a 30% damage reduction, and then 2% increase, which is going up to 12%, and then you got a 4 that's going up to what, a 24%. So it's an absurd amount of damage reduction. Epic wise, Ring of the Falcon for Confucius is one of the all-star rings to actually put on him. You're going to increase his effectiveness on his healing, and as many people will tell you, at 5 stars, this hero heals like an absolute truckload. This is just because at 5 stars, his signature skill goes from every 16 to every 8 activations of a healing effect on your skill, which is just bonkers if you ask me. You can try other rings. Some people will suggest, you know, there is like Ring of the Badger, which is reducing normal attack and second strike skill damage. As you guessed it, this is basically targeting the cavalry players that might hit you, but as you may just realize, raw damage reduction is better because you can get it much more easier through signet rings and, more importantly, the mounts that we're going to go through. So when it comes to mounts for your Ramesses and even for your St. Louis and even for Suleiman, all three share the exact same type of actual mount, which is a spirit bond mount, which means you need a trait that says mounted heroes active skill strategy damage is being increased. This is the first layer of damage that you're going to be able to apply to all of those three heroes. But then the second trait that you can go for is either a bedrock, which is going to reduce all damage taken from all types, or you can go for Armyy Sunder, which is going to further increase all types of damage that this particular hero deals by 9%. So either one of those traits are perfect for your mount. When it comes to the adornments, this is where things get quite spicy, especially for your good old archer marchers. If you go to the adornment workshop, you're going to go down, and for all of the DPS commanders, like your St. Louis, for your Ramesses, and for your Suleiman, you're going to be going down the piercing arrow to increase the hero skill damage, health, and attack. And for Suleiman specifically, you actually want to scroll down and actually get deceptive words. This is a turn-based skill every 9 seconds that can inflict either burn, incapacitation, or silence on the target. So as you can see, this is giving your hero himself, the Everflame Wings, and the adornment as much opportunities to control your enemy down, and as you guessed it, get that Suleiman payoff of either doing an extra bit of damage, either increasing his damage he's dealing, or recovering troops, which is a really cool, powerful tool. Apart from that, when it comes to your Ramesses, and even when it comes to your St. Louis, I actually prefer running the actual skill calculation or even resistance on here, right? Resistance is a very powerful one because this is going to give you, for 3 instances of skill damage reduction to them. So you're going to take less damage through this skill. And if we scroll up, you got Eye of the Storm, and then Lightning Strike, and then even more importantly, Strike Weakness. If the target is affected by debuffs, you're able to do more damage. And Strike Soul, when the commander skill hits one troop, it only does this amount of damage. You'll notice this here could work for your Suleiman. It could work for St. Louis. It just isn't good enough. And when it comes to all of the different types of skills that you've got here for the adornments, the best thing to be doing, honestly, is just reducing as much damage as possible for your commander. So literally, if you can get resistance, I would just slap on resistance for Ramesses or St. Louis. When it comes to the other heroes that we're going to talk about, so if you jump back out and we look at Confucius here, or Zuliang, or even your Charlemagne and Theodora as a really good example, all of those type of heroes are going to be looking to have Lifesaver on top of them. If you put Lifesaver on top of them, anytime they heal, as you've guessed it, they're going to give you extra damage reduction, which is what you want. On top of this, you're going to take Bedrock, which is going to reduce further damage taken out there for your march. And it's that simple. Reduce as much damage as you can. That is the key for your support traits. When it comes into their actual mounts, as you've guessed it, their mount adornment is very similar to what we've talked about before. We literally want them to run instead the Eagle's Blessing, which is going to give them instead damage reduction, health, and defense. So you get super tanky for your archers because you're going to have 2 of these equipped to your march. And then when it comes to the special effects, just like I said before, you're going to be running resistance. The only time you may stray away from this again is if you check out Queen Syndeok. If you run Queen Syndeok, you can run again deceptive words on that hero. If you run deceptive words on Queen Syndeok, this is the only time I would only advise literally running the skill Strike Soul for your Suleiman, because you're going to do extra damage through this or through Strike Weakness. Because as you've guessed it, if your Queen Syndeok is silencing, burning, and has an adornment that can silence, burn, and incapacitate, with Everflame Wings, you really don't need your Suleiman to have this on as well. So you only need one Deceptive Words. Make sure it's on the Queen Syndiok. And if you're running Suleiman, running that Strike Soul or literally running Strike Weakness is one of the two best things to do, because Suleiman can be happy with either of them. So apart from that, now we've jumped through all of the rings, we've gone through the mounts, traits, and the adornments. The only thing that you need to know is obviously your gems. And as you're most likely going to guess, when it comes to your helmet, the gem attributes that we actually care about the most is going to be unit health. We want as much unit health as possible on there. And if you do not have as many, unit health gems, just put unit defense. If you can boost up your defense for your archers, it is going to help you in the meantime until you get your unit health gems on there. Apart from that, when it comes to your hands, it's pretty simple. All of these heroes use strategy. So all you're going to be wanting to use, as you've guessed it, is hero strategy gems. If you don't have any of these type of gems, you can run all attributes as a second option. When it comes to your chest piece, it is very easy to understand. When it comes to your Ramesses, Suleiman, as well as your St. Louis, all three major DPS commanders need to have active skill damage gems. That's just going to allow their damage to do more. When it comes to Confucius, and obviously Theodora, Zuliang, even when it comes into cases of your Charlemagne, running hero recovery effects is just the best thing to do. Just help them keep you alive, because the longer you're going to be alive, the more damage you're going to deal, or the more control effects that you're going to deal for your marchers. And when it comes to the legs, you literally put in one of each gems that I've mentioned in each of the slots, so you should know what to put in there. And that is literally everything that you need to know with this formation. As many people will ask, and just to say it right now, when it comes to mercenaries, it is down to preference what you want. I personally prefer running the samurai because it reduces damage taken by 2%, and it also increases your activation chance of your skills, which is what you want to happen. But if you want to go down French Axemen, they're perfectly fine. Every time you activate their skills, you're going to get extra stats, and you reduce might damage on top even further. So those are honestly all other types of mercenaries that you need. And with all of that information, we have honestly gone through everything that I can tell you with tactical actions in this video. So smash like, comment, and subscribe with that. And before we finish, I will summarize it all in a quick rundown. So with that, we've got the Suleiman marchers. The Suleiman has the Queen Syndiok setups, which are heavy control focus, where you start with a Theodora, and later down the line, you'll upgrade this into a Zuliang, and finally into the Confucius. You have the Suleiman versions that are more damage orientated, where you drop your good old Queen Syndiok, and you run Charlemagne Zuliang, and later on upgrade this into Confucius Zuliang for maximum damage. You have Ramesses, which is your major DPS setups that run Zuliang, Theodora early phase. But then if you want to go for more DPS oriented instead of surviving damage, you can go for the Charlemagne setup. But in the late game, as you guessed it, you're going to be running Ramesses, Confucius, Zuliang. And then instead of having the 100% guaranteed commander skill to target only one enemy, and you went down the road of the AOE incapacitation of St. Louis, Charlemagne Confucius is the maximum uptime to try and make you do as much damage as possible. But the better setup that I prefer is going to be the Confucius Zuliang to keep you alive, while again activating as much as you can. And that is honestly everything that you're going to need to know for your good old marchers. So if you enjoyed the video, smash a like, comment, and subscribe. If you've got any questions, literally put them down in the comment section down below. I am happy to answer anything for you guys, since I was an archer main, honestly, for over a year and a half in this game, so I know everything about these guys inside and out, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Again, if you enjoy Age of Empires Mobile, check out the link down below and download the game today. So with all that said, stay safe, stay sneaky, peace out.